Hi, and welcome to Bible Secrets, a contemporary podcast series about the origins, translations, and interpretations of the Bible and Holy Scriptures.
We hope you enjoyed this piece of art in the form of discussion, which was derived from hours of independent study and a burning passion for seeking truth and wisdom.
We speak freely on this podcast, so there may be language that's not entirely suited or agreed with everybody, but it's meant to be fun while it's also educational.
Please like and subscribe, share, and help us reach more people and inspire conversations that can both be hard but necessary. This is Bible Secrets.
Hell yeah! I wanna know what the meaning of life is. I wanna know the cost of your faith.
See, now you know how to look up those words on Blue Letter Bible.
Yes, it helps a lot.
Did you really not know how to do that before?
I literally have done that with Bible Hub, where I just type in the verse and then Bible Hub's usually the first one that comes up. But
Yeah.
if I put in Blue Letter Bible, because then it's
You
just
can
about,
look up the
you can
real ass
dive into
words,
it.
dog. Yeah.
That's
really
dope as
nice.
fuck. Welcome back, everybody, to episode 10. Episode 10. We've hit double digits out here. This one is going into the Mosaic Law right here. So, what do you understand Mosaic Law to be?
From my understanding, Mosaic Law comes from Moses, which is why it's called Mosaic.
Right?
It is found in the Old Testament throughout the Torah, which are the first 5 books of the Bible, also written from Moses. It contains 616 laws, I want to say. Over 600.
13.
613, yeah. At least over 600.
Yeah. Yep.
And originally it was called the Law of Sin and Death.
Interesting.
Because in order for us to sin, the punishment for sin is death, which is
Right.
why when we ate of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil,
Right.
we died.
Right. Yep.
So essentially it was the sins that you would commit that would keep you from God, and then how you needed to kill an animal, slaughter an animal in order to come back into reconciliation or oneness, I guess, with God.
With God, right. Okay. So I did some research, and let me just run through what I've just learned a little bit. So same thing, Law of Moses refers primarily to the Torah, but not all of the Torah. I think it's a little bit out of it. The 613 mitzvot is what it's called, but I also learned that Torah means instruction.
Interesting. Okay.
Okay, so this is one really important thing to think about is when Christ pissed off the Pharisees. And do you remember what book that's in? I have no idea. But he casts demons out, and the Pharisees are like, "No, he's doing that in the name of the devil. Like, it's not."
Yeah, it's in the Gospels.
Yeah, it's in the Gospel
Matthew.
somewhere. What they're doing is they're freaked the fuck out because of the law, the code that they stick to, regardless of any miracle that they would ever see. They allegedly treated and abused the Torah and the instructions from God in that way. And so when you have instruction and someone says, yeah, like a psalm, you know what I'm saying? But if I got killed for not following a psalm, that'd be pretty fucked up. You know what I'm saying?
Totally.
But I hypothetically could make a doctrine where I convince people that the Psalms are something if I don't see you living out the Psalms, I could come over and fucking kill you or do whatever the Psalm says I can do in that verse. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. You can justify anything. But the interesting thing is that, the Torah does mean instruction. And so I don't know why I have this, but let's read it. Deuteronomy 22:5. The woman shall not wear that which pertaineth unto a man, neither shall a man put on a woman's garment, for all that he do is an abomination unto the Lord. Damn, I had a point with that, and I can't remember what it was.
You hate trans people.
Hate them all. No, I can't remember why I put that, because there was a thing I was trying to do. Oh, I was just trying to find the most controversial ones. That's why.
And that's pretty controversial, dog.
100%. And this one also The circumcision.
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about circumcision. It's kind of weird. Kind of
Yeah.
like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And then apparently, like David or some shit asked for like 100 circumcised penis skins or some shit for some story. Very weird.
Yeah, interesting that David would ask for circumcised penis skins, huh?
It just it feels weird.
Yeah, it's a
it
little
feels
interesting.
weird naturally, but
It's a little interesting.
So one of the arguments or points that I want to make here is that when we're talking about law, capitalist, patriarchal America, when we hear law, what do we think about? We think cops. We think people banging your fucking door down and enforcing the law. If you don't follow this law, this will happen. Boom, boom, right? But what I kind of understand it could mean is it's kind of like the law of nature, okay? So a law of nature isn't something that you will be punished if you don't follow. A law of nature is just purely followed.
Mm-hmm.
A regularly occurring or apparently inevitable phenomenon observable in human society. Or this is more of like a Christian, is a rule of conduct arising out of the natural relations of human beings established by the Creator and existing prior to any positive precept. Thus, it is a law of nature that one man should not injure another, and murder and fraud would be the crimes independent of any prohibition from a supreme power. So what does that mean to you? Does that have any meaning to you?
Yeah, I mean, it comes from the Creator, and it was existing before anything else.
Yes.
So it's like this is saying that the law would be more like the law of nature and or maybe of God.
And it's just something that's inevitable. You know
Right.
what I'm saying? Something that will happen. And
Like it was predestined.
it's like it was predestined. So that's kind of my understanding of what this is that these are instructions that we take that they're presented to us and again, like it also feels like this statement does not feel very poetic or like, oh, what does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
What could they mean by that? Pertaineth. It seems like it says, for a society to function in a biblical manner, this is what should happen.
Right.
Now, does that mean that if I take this and I see a man wearing a woman's clothes, should I kill him? I don't know if I should. Even if it says something like akin to death, it's still, you're supposed to treat it very importantly, is what I'm understanding that to be saying. You know what I'm saying? So if it's saying blah, blah, this, and this is like comparable to death or whatever, or if you do this, then you should receive death. Again, if we're going to kill people, because there was one where it was like, it was about love. And if you don't love with your heart, then you're breaking one of the Mosaic laws.
Interesting.
So someone could come up and say, I see you haven't been loving with your heart, so I'm going to fucking kill you.
Mm-hmm.
You should love with your heart as if your life depends on it, is what it's saying. That you should compare it to how important death is. That's how important you should be holding this shit, is that it's very, very important. You should bank your life on it almost.
Right.
Loving with your heart rather than hating with your heart. Okay. So that's kind of what I understand the Mosaic Law to be. And so I think we're gonna be kind of coming from two different spots here. Just in terms of our initial definitions and just
Yeah,
let's
can
just see where we go.
I pose a question to you real quick?
Absolutely.
And I'm going to tell you something that a lot of cops don't tell before they tell the criminals. Okay.
Okay.
I'm trying to trap you here.
Okay.
Do you think that applies to all the Mosaic laws? That they are laws of nature?
No. Well, I would say, I don't know. I'd have to read them all.
There was a video that you did send me where it broke down like the different types of laws that Moses wrote and how some of them were like laws of God and some of them were like civil laws for how times were during the day and this or that. The only reason that I bring it up is just because, I mean, yeah, we can say that they're the laws of nature and that it's what God would have wanted, but included in those 613 laws, I mean, there's arguably horrific things, and things that just don't make any sense.
Well,
like,
so do you, I have the whole list. If you have any like keywords I could search.
Yeah, can you look up rape? Not grapes.
Not great.
Or like assault. Essentially, there's a law that says if someone assaults somebody else, like if a guy sexually assaults a woman, then he has to marry her.
Oh, interesting. So I would bring up this question: what does marry mean in terms of is this man now financially responsible for this woman in those times? Because that was the argument that I heard to it, is that...
Okay, but if we're coming from the laws of nature, right, not necessarily of Mosaic Law, thinking of it as like times for them,
okay.
If they're just of nature, do you think that's right?
Well, the question is, what is nature? Because is nature without God or with God? Because like
the laws of nature that you just brought up,
right?
That the Mosaic Law,
that is something that's inevitable that will happen,
right?
And so,
and if in there is included a passage, and I can look it up on my phone, I guess, if we need to, or we can look it up.
Yeah, I have
like
it here.
If you just look up the 613 Mosaic laws, I know. Addresses a man who finds an engaged woman in a field and rapes her.
Yes.
Yeah. So Deuteronomy 22. Yeah.
So that's interesting. So what they're saying is that women would maybe be raped and then they would be deemed undesirable to the society.
So then they would have to marry them.
And so they would have no status. They would have no money. And so then the man who did that would be forced to marry her. So then he would be responsible for her in that aspect.
Because that's going to help the victim. You see what I'm saying there?
Well, so
where it's
like if tossing the victim to the side and saying, "Yep, no one's gonna care for you," because again, it's just the society norms.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, this girl had sex. She's not a virgin anymore. I don't care if it's rape or anything. I don't give a fuck. Toss her to the side. Does that help the victim more? Well,
here's what I would say: if we still have to live by these laws today, which we haven't even got into of what it means if we live by them or not today,
right?
I can give it to you that back then, right? Let's say that a woman gets sexually assaulted and that the tribe or whatever would absolutely throw her away.
And severely damage the status.
Right. Okay. I can give you that during that time, it might be better for the person who assaulted her to marry her. Right. But during today, I would absolutely say that that's not the case.
Okay.
And so to me, that makes a big argument for these aren't inherently the laws of God, because that's much different than how we would view today. I would never ask someone who's been sexually assaulted by a man or anybody to marry that person, to have to oblige in marrying that person.
Right.
Because it doesn't necessarily today take away your status or whatever.
True.
I mean, I don't want to say it arguably gives you more status. It doesn't really do anything for you, but
But people will be empathetic towards it more than
absolutely back then.
Right.
Which to me would mean that it's more of a societal thing than a God thing.
Right. Well, and that's exactly right, is that a lot of people would argue that we're not under these circumstances anymore.
Exactly.
So they don't apply.
Mm-hmm.
So do you believe that, or do you think, because I have no idea.
I think that when you look at the Sermon on the Mount specifically and Matthew 19, which are very similar, Jesus talks a lot about not abolishing the law, but to fulfill it. These are the exact words that he uses in Matthew 5 is I didn't come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. So a lot of people think that means that we still need to live by Mosaic covenants because Jesus didn't abolish the law. The law still exists.
Right.
I think what that means is that the Mosaic Law was the law of sin and death. So the purpose of it was to bring us back into union with God,
right?
Which is what Jesus did. We inevitably sin. Therefore, there has to be bloodshed. And through that, we get in union with God. So we sin, Jesus dies, and he is the one who fulfills the law.
Right.
And makes a new covenant with us.
Right.
I'm pretty sure the new covenant is also scriptural, but I'm not necessarily sure.
Okay.
But I'm pretty sure that he says that I'm here to make a new covenant with you.
Okay.
So to me, in the Sermon on the Mount specifically, when we look at it, Jesus talks about, you've heard it said, thou shalt not commit murder, thou shalt not do this, thou shalt not do that. And he says, but I say to you that it's this. So, for example, he says, you've heard it said, thou shalt, and if we could just bring up Matthew 5, that'd be awesome. It says, thou shalt not murder, but I say to you, anyone who has anger in his heart towards his brother has already committed murder.
Right.
So to me, what that means is that Jesus doesn't necessarily care about your actions and not all the way through. Cause obviously if you act, poorly, then Jesus is going to care about that a little bit,
right.
But it has more to do with your heart and your intent.
Okay.
and what's in your mind and what's in your spirit and your soul.
Right. Okay.
Blessed are thee. Can you go down a little bit, please? Salt and the light. A little bit further. Jesus fulfills the law. Anger and reconciliation. Right below it, yeah. We'll go to adultery. And another example. Ye have heard it said that it was before the times of old that thou shalt not commit adultery. But I say to you that whoever looketh on a woman to lust after her hath committed adultery with her already in his heart.
So wouldn't that just make that like there's a deeper layer of the law?
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely.
Because
I think
it still matters if you commit adultery, but it also is mattering where your thoughts are, even if you're not acting upon it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I agree with that. Where it's like there is still going to be sin where if you act, it's not just like sin goes away.
Right.
But it is saying to me in Matthew 5 that it's much more about what is coming from you and what is in you rather than living this certain way in order to become in union with God.
Right.
Because I will bring you into union with God. But you need to check your heart. You need to check your soul. But you're going to sin. But what's more important than your sin is where are you placing your focus in your worship?
Well, and I could bring up a couple verses with this, like the heart is something that's like bad from my understanding. Like man's heart is bad and like akin to evil very easily.
For sure.
Yeah.
But when I'm saying that we need to check our hearts, that's exactly what I mean.
Right.
Is your heart is bad.
Right.
But if we're trying to become into union with God, in oneness with God, we need to check our hearts because if we have sin and temptation and people, I forget who it is, but an old preacher guy said that the inception of sin is imagination.
Right.
You can't sin unless you think, oh, yeah, I'm going to do that thing. Right. So when I'm saying that we need to check our hearts, I mean exactly that, like you're saying.
Right.
That our hearts are bad.
Evil.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
So it is more to do with what's in you rather than what you're doing.
Right. Okay. Well, so I guess when I hear that, it seems like when he came and fulfilled the law, that the law is now complete. Right. Mm-hmm. And when you finish a race and it's complete, then it's over. Right.
Interesting. Okay.
Do you see what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying there. Yeah.
Do you think that? Because that was one argument that I heard is that now that the law has been fulfilled, we don't have to worry about the law. But when that is the case, then abolish and fulfill have the same like definition.
Interesting. Can you look up for me real quick Matthew 19? Yes. So to answer your question, I think, first of all, before we go into this, I think that's an interesting thought, that abolish and fulfill would mean the same thing if it just went away. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I think that there's still going to be things that keep you from God, right? But I think that Jesus's thing was that there are more rules in the Old Testament that may not pertain to us today. Right? Like, for example, it was a rule that you can't sit where a menstruated woman is sat. Right. Why? Like, what in your heart? Unless, like, okay, let's say that some girl was on her period and she sat there. And then you were, like, infatuated with that girl. And you're like, man, I would wonder what I'll be like in her pants right now. Right. And then you go and sit there. Right. To try to, like, be in your mind some little sexual deviant. Mm-hmm. That's sin. Right. I would say that's sin. Right. But it doesn't just apply to it if, like, a girl's on her period and then gets up and moves and you're like, all right, fuck it, I'm going to go sit there now. Right. You know what I mean? That's what I think, where it comes down to what's in you. And there are going to be rules and laws from the Old Testament that I don't think we follow anymore. But I think it comes down
complete, right?
To make it incomplete.
To make it complete. It's like he's making those laws fulfilled, so then they're no longer needed. Because I look at it like a car. And if you're driving a car with 3 wheels and you want to complete that car, you add a 4th wheel on it, and now that it is complete, you can now accomplish greater things with 4 wheels now that it is fulfilled, but you don't then say, okay, now that the car is complete, let's throw it away. You keep driving with it, but now it's like it's got a deeper level to it because it's not just my actions, it's my actions and my thoughts. Because again, if it's abolish, and he says I didn't come to abolish would say it's done with, it's no more, it is meaningless. And fulfill in that aspect feels like it's complete, so now it's meaningless. It doesn't mean anything anymore. and now we're sitting with abolish and fulfill as the same thing.
Well, it's interesting with what you're saying because I agree with you where they are two different words, but yeah, I don't know. I think for me, when I look at it, the reason that we had the law was to bring us closer to God. And that's what Jesus came to do, was to die and to bring us into salvation and into, union with God.
Right.
So when you look at the word abolish to mean to completely get rid of, to throw out, to not care about anymore, I don't think it means that. I don't think it means to abolish the law, because abolish, like you said, would mean to completely throw out.
Right.
And I don't think Jesus is saying that. I think he's saying that I've come to fulfill.
Right. Because he's saying I did not come to abolish.
Right.
So
but does abolish mean that you're throwing out everything, or if you throw out one thing, does that mean that you're abolishing it?
Yeah, like if you abolish one law, you would have abolished the law.
You think so?
Yeah, you would abolish part of the law.
Can we look up on Blue Letter Bible what the word abolish means?
Absolutely. Because
I would argue that it would mean to completely get rid of. Matthew 5. Like in the same way that perish in John 3:16 means to completely, that you become no more.
Right.
And I don't really know what that means either. Yeah, I don't know what's going on here. Oh, you're just on some article.
We could just look up what was the word?
No, the fifth. Yeah, that one right there, yeah. And then scroll down to where he says, I did not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it.
Oh, and in the KJV, it's destroy.
Yeah, so what does that mean? So can you go to tools? And then think not that I've come to destroy. What does that word mean? G2647. It's a verb. And it's destroy, throw down, to dissolve, disunite.
Yeah.
Disunite. What does it join together? To destroy, to demolish, to overthrow, to deprive of success. Yeah. So I would argue that if we throw out one thing, it's not necessarily overthrowing the law.
Well, because I would argue that disunites the law.
I see what you're saying there, where it's like the law is no longer all one.
Because it's not the law anymore if you take 10 out of it. It's something different.
But are you dissolving it? That's the thing,
you're dissolving a section of it for sure.
A section, but I don't think you're dissolving all of it. And if we look,
because it's saying you can't disunite, which just means you're separating.
That's a translation. It's not necessarily the, right? Like there's all of these things that also mean.
I think these all apply. Like you're demolishing it, you're destroying it. It doesn't say to completely rid of.
What does demolish and to destroy mean? That's
to damage. You know what I'm saying? To
demolish?
Yeah.
Okay, let's say that you were playing football.
Right.
And some dude demolished you.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I would have went away. I would say that I was like severely damaged.
I would disagree.
What would you say? What would you say happened to me?
I think demolish. So if you demolish a building, you're making that building no more. You're not wrecking that building.
Right.
Like if you come in and you damage the building, I think that's different than demolish. When they say we're going to demolish this building, they're taking a wrecking ball or whatever they're going to take,
right,
and they boom, boom, boom until that building is no more.
Right.
And I don't think Jesus is saying that.
Well, because you could, just like you said, demolishing a football game, like I didn't get completely disappeared.
But it doesn't mean that he just hit your leg. That's what I'm trying to get at. It's your whole body that got
severe damage on me. Yeah, for sure. So the whole cannot function as one. And when you take bits and pieces of the law, it's not functioning as the one law. It's disunited. Or that law that was established has been destroyed because it's no longer the same thing. It's been changed. So that concept of it has been demolished, but not completely taken to the ground.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
I just disagree.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
I was just using that football analogy.
For sure. No, and I hear you.
Yeah.
And I think that it is, no, I don't want to say likely, but it's a good argument to say that, if you, even in some of these lower ones, it's like to discard.
Yeah. I'd
right.
agree with that.
Like, yeah. So I see what you're saying there, but I think that when you're talking about abolishing, you're talking about getting rid of all of it. And I don't think that's what Jesus came to do. And even if we go to Matthew 19,
Okay.
Is that where we're at now? Yeah.
Yep.
Can you go up? It's literally at the top of it. And it came to pass that Jesus had finished his sayings. The Pharisees came to him, tempting him, saying unto him, is it lawful for a man to put away his wife for every cause? And he answered to them, saying, have ye not read it heard, which from the beginning made him them man and female, and said, for this shall a man leave his father, talking about oneness of God. Verse 9. Oh, okay, so verse 7 says, did Moses command to give writings of divorce and put her away? He saith unto them, Moses, because of the heart. Okay, so what the Pharisees are arguing here is, should we be able to divorce our wife for anything?
Right.
And Jesus says, have you not heard it said that from the beginning, God made man and female to separate from their parents and become in one?
Right.
And in verse 7, they said, why did Moses then command to give writings of divorce and to put her away? So Moses in the Old Testament, the Torah, the Mosaic Law, said that if your wife commits adultery, then you can divorce her.
Right.
Okay. But other than that, divorce is not okay. And then Jesus said in verse 8, Moses, because of the hardness of your heart, suffered you to put away your wives. But from the beginning it was not so. And I saith to you, whoever shall put away his wife, except for it be fornication, and shall not marry, committeth adultery. Moses, because of the hardness of your heart, suffered you to put away from your wives and from the beginning. I thought that there was a verse where it said that God allowed Moses. It might be in Matthew 5. Where God allowed Moses to make that because of the hardness of their hearts. Maybe it could be a different translation, so maybe that's just something that they put in.
Got you. Okay.
But that was the reason that got put in was because of the people at the time. Right. So to me, that kind of says that there are going to be Mosaic laws that don't really apply because it's the people at the time
I can see that. Yeah.
that they now, are different. Can you scroll down a little bit?
Yep.
One down more. And behold came. Okay, and this is another one too. So we've talked about this before, right? This is like a lot of people say that Jesus said the greatest commandments were to love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself.
Right.
This is true, but also in Matthew 19, you see, and behold, one came and said to him, good master, what good thing shall I do that I may have eternal life? So a guy comes up to Jesus. He's like, what do I need to do? And Jesus says, why callest me thou good? There is none good but one, that is God. But if thou wilt enter the kingdom of life and keep my commandments. And he said, which ones, Jesus? And Jesus said, thou shalt not do not murder, do not commit adultery, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness, honor thy mother and thy father, and love thy neighbor as thyself. And then essentially the dude is like, oh yeah? And Jesus is like, I've done those. And he's like, what do I do now? And Jesus was like, sell all your shit. And he was like, nah.
I don't want to do that.
So to me, this is where we really get where it's like, what is the most quote unquote important things to God?
Right.
Because Jesus is the one speaking of that.
Yep.
And I think here we see it's murder, adultery, stealing, bearing false witness, honoring your mother and your father, and loving your neighbor as thyself.
Right.
Now, it doesn't just, to me, mean, well, that means to just don't kill people, don't commit adultery, don't do this, don't do that. Because in Matthew 5, he says, you've heard it said, don't murder, but I say to you, whoever commits adultery. So it's still that deeper level of what are you worshiping and what are you chasing?
Yep.
What is your focus on?
Right.
But I think that it goes into not all of the Old Testament will be kept. Can you scroll up just a little bit? Okay, and this is another testament to that. In verse 10, it says, his disciples say to him, and this is after he was talking to the Pharisees about divorce.
Okay.
If the case of the man be so his wife, it is not good to marry. And he says to them, all men cannot receive the sayings, save they to whom it is given. So he says, what I'm about to tell you, not everyone can receive it, but the ones who will receive it are dope. For there are such eunuchs, which were born so from their mother's womb, and there were some eunuchs that were made eunuchs of men, and there were some eunuchs which have themselves been eunuchs for the kingdom of which have made themselves eunuchs for the kingdom of God. He who is able to receive it, let him receive. So, in Mosaic law, it was illegal for a man to be castrated, for you to cut off his penis.
Right.
eunuch is an interesting word in the Old Testament or in the Bible, because it does in modern day refer to a guy who's had his dick cut off.
Right.
So you could take it there, but a eunuch is also in this time someone who could have been of high status, who was like high status in regards to like royalty. Like they were usually the hands of kings and queens and princes and things like that.
Right.
Oftentimes, if they were with like a queen or a princess, they were usually gay.
Oh, right. Okay.
Like eunuchs it was a more broad term
Right.
than just a man who's had his castrated penis. But I think
Right.
Jesus uses it like this to say there's these eunuchs who were born like this. There are eunuchs who were made eunuchs by men, and there are some eunuchs who become eunuchs for the kingdom of heaven.
Right.
Talking about, there is this old covenant, but there are going to be certain things in there that may not really apply to you because some people might not have control over them.
Right. Well, and that point exactly, I think, kind of caters to my idea of what Mosaic Law is that there's this understanding that it's just like Psalms. You can't follow a psalm in every single situation. Sometimes it doesn't apply.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But if I took the psalm and made a country and then said, it's illegal to do this and I will kill you for it, we're no longer dealing with what the Bible says. We're dealing with what I am making happen because of my interpretation of it.
Totally.
Because again, from my understanding, this Mosaic Law is like more like Psalms and Proverbs of wisdom rather than if you don't do this, then a Pharisee gets to hang you in the street. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So so I'm totally seeing that.
Do you not think that they're like the laws of God, the laws of nature? Isn't that what you were claiming?
Well, I think it's the instructions. I think a definition akin to it is that like there's a proverb that's like, talk to fools and you're foolish, don't talk to fools and you're foolish.
Right.
And what that essentially is saying is that or don't talk to a fool, and we talked about this one, and he will be smart in his own eyes or some shit. And so what that's saying is that the law of a fool is that no matter what, it's stupid and you're going to lose. Mm-hmm. Either you don't talk to him and he's going to walk off thinking he's smart, or you're going to talk to him and you're going to get into an argument with him, and then you're just as foolish as him. That's the law of the fool, is that it's just something that happens. You deal with it. This is the tip that you have. These are the two things that are going to happen when you come across a fool. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. That's the law of a fool, is that it's something that's inevitable that will happen when it happens. And so when you know that, there's wisdom, and then you can say, okay, well, I'm not even going to argue and then stop talking to the fool and let him walk off thinking he's smart. I may just say, hey, Jesus loves you, and that's it. You know what I'm saying? Or something, whatever.
Right.
But there's that idea of like, so the law of a fool, there's no law of like, I'm going to cut your head off if you're a fool. There's a naturalistic thing that happens when you engage with a fool that seems to happen in a pattern over and over and over, regardless if you're in 200 BC or 450 BC or 1800s. You deal with a fool, those are your outcomes. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of where I'm coming from.
So do you think that the Mosaic Law was pertinent for those people's salvation before Christ?
I don't know. I don't know what the salvation was.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, because obviously it wasn't Christ. I don't know if it was just a relationship with God and an awareness of God. Because again, then it would be more like maybe Islam or Judaism where it's just the code.
Yeah.
And that's my question is how important was the code in terms of what Pharisees made it seem versus what the actual thing was. They said it was a law that I can enforce, and Torah means instruction.
Right.
So like, we're really stretching this term of law to really cater to these motherfuckers that really care about the law and the law and the law and the law, so much so that they would pick it over Christ. Okay, well, we have an issue here. Mm-hmm. Because this thing is packed full of wisdom that it's trying to say, even as controversial as Deuteronomy 22:5 is, this is still an alleged nugget of, if you want a society to function, this is what God is saying, or allegedly what God is saying. If you want a long-term, this is the wisdom that you want to maintain your masculine men and your women. There's a difference between them. Mm-hmm. If you mix the two, then you're mixing the two, and they start to become not really anything because nothing has a definition. What is a woman? Well, a woman is a woman is a woman is a woman, and a man is a man is a woman is a man. Whatever it means, whatever you want it to mean.
Well, whose reality are we living in?
Exactly,
yeah.
Exactly. And so when you're looking at this, it's not that, if I see a man wearing a dress, I go kill him. It's just that the wisdom is, if you want a society to have a long-standing function, this is what this book recommends. Again, we can go whether it's true or not, blah, blah, blah.
That's interesting, bro. That's really interesting. And first of all, I would disagree with you about that. But I like what you're saying because I think that it gives a much more broad, like way of looking at it. Like sin, right? That a lot of people think of today when they're like, oh, well, you sinned. You did something that's so bad. And It's detrimental to God. The original meaning of sin was to miss the mark.
Right.
It was literally like akin to shooting an arrow and not hitting a bullseye. Well, if you hit just outside of the bullseye, you're still sinning.
Yep.
But you're not exactly. It's not like you're off of the course in the beaten path.
Yep.
And so I kind of like what you're saying, where it's like it's more of just instructions for how to keep God, not to keep God close to us, but how to keep His commandments.
Right, and how to and it does. And again, this is either salvation or not, and it would be very important to know what these are. But when you get a group that then hijacks it, and then they are the enforcers of everything, they're stepping in for God, and that's, I think, a misrepresentation potentially of all of these things. So
the reason that I would disagree with you is because of probably just because of what I was taught when I was a kid. I was taught, and this goes back to previous episodes that we've done, that when Jesus died, right, and the veil was ripped in the temple, it showed that God now was across the world.
Right.
Whereas in Old Testament times, it was well known that God existed in the temples. He existed in the Holy of Holies and the holy places, right? So He couldn't be around sin.
Right.
So in order for us to come into union with God before Christ, I don't think we could have a relationship with Him without the sin of the law of the sin of death.
Without the Mosaic Law.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. And also, I don't think we need Pharisees enforcing it as a code of conduct for a country to do that. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Just like our country's set up, it's not set up to bring us closer to Christ. It's set up to have some sort of order, which Pharisees like, but that we can then function and find Christ within that. You know what I'm saying? Like,
totally.
So it's tough. It's tough. It's the guys that hijacked it kind of make me suspicious.
That goes back to my question of, do you think it was necessary for their salvation? Like, just because
we should Google that.
Just because, it shouldn't be the law of the land, that everything shouldn't be ruled over this Mosaic Law, I've always kind of been taught that unless you have, like you're saying, unless you have relationship with God, it's going to be really hard to get into God's kingdom. And unless you are committing bloodshed, then it's going to be really hard to come into union with God, because God can't come around you because there's sin that's just over you, like Thetans, that are just enforcing you. So that's kind of what I was always brought up thinking.
So even if we both agree that it's for salvation, where's the disagreement happening after that? Because I think Google's telling me right here, at least in this bottom thing, Mosaic Law is absolutely required for salvation, is completely necessary for a Christian to follow the Mosaic Law, and that might be speaking.
That's for them, but definitely for Hebrews, definitely for the Israelites, the ancient people of God. Right.
And so I could see that.
Yeah,
I could see that because Christ didn't exist to be that innocent blood to get you there, right?
So I guess so we can agree that it was. I think we differ on where the word abolish comes in, maybe.
Well, because I don't. If I'm going just KJV, it's used as destroy.
Okay.
I don't think it says abolish.
Okay. So we agree that ancient Hebrews viewed, at least, that they needed the law of sin and death for salvation, correct?
Yes.
And we agree that it shouldn't have been the law of the land, because you should probably have some sort of separation between church and state.
Yes.
From
what I understand, yep.
Do you think that we need to be living by Mosaic Law now? Like it says in this article up top.
Well, when it says completely necessary, what does that mean? Does that mean for salvation? And then that's arguing the divinity of Christ, right? Because we're getting into our works over our relationship. I
would say so.
Okay. Sorry, what was your question again?
My question is, do you think we still need to be following Mosaic Law today?
Oh, for sure. Just like Psalms and shit. When you see a good ass nugget of wisdom that completely is absolutely about your life and you're like, damn, okay, that totally applies to me, I think so.
Totally. You should take any wisdom that's pertinent to you.
Yeah.
It's like being like life and divinity to me, I feel like is like being a mixed martial artist. It's like maybe you're not going to be entirely a wrestler, but you should know how to have good takedown defense.
Yeah, yep.
And you shouldn't, entirely be a kickboxer, but you should know how to throw a couple of kicks.
Right, yep.
So where does that differ for you? Do you think that if you look at some sort of Mosaic Law, right, where it says you shouldn't wear 2 fabrics on your body that are different, where it says you shouldn't play with the skin of a pig, sorry all you Americans who love the Packers, or any football team, I guess. I don't know why I just picked Packers. Where it says you should, marry the girl that the rapist has to marry the girl that he assaults. What do you think, like, when you run into stuff like that? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Because
yeah. 100%.
I wouldn't say that those are good things. I wouldn't necessarily say all of them are bad.
Right. Like a pigskin seems kind of like, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Most of them are like, whatever. Right.
We're kind of splitting hairs on, because I heard an interesting, and I can't remember it, the argument for because like it's a very common atheist, the 2 clothes woven together.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But again, if someone says, well, the Bible says that you can kill me if I wear 2 woven clothes, they may be taking that Pharisee influence of that and misrepresenting the Bible. And because it's like, well, yeah, the Bible gives a tip or instruction about, for whatever reason, and if you really want to figure out if there is a danger or a thing that happens when you mix the 2 or whatever, I don't know.
Right.
But again, if someone kills you for it, I don't know if that's representing the law in that hand. And so then if you're looking at it as just like a corrupted book of some wisdom, some not, then it's just like, okay, that's kind of stupid.
Right.
And if you look at it as the infallible word of God, you can say, oh shit, okay, well, there may be some type of wisdom behind this. I'll dive in a little more. But to say, aha, well, I'll go kill somebody if I see them wearing cotton and silk at the same time or woven together. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
And that's where I think people have a very, very strong opinion on Mosaic Law is that, well, they were murdering people for the stupidest things, and so no God would do that. And it's like, yeah, I don't think he would. You know what I'm saying? But also there are some of these laws or whatever or instructions that say, like, if you do it, you should die. You know what I'm saying? And so then it's like, well, but it doesn't say you should be murdered by the government.
Totally.
So who gets to hand that death down? Not me. You know what I'm saying?
It's always going to be God.
Yeah, it's always going to be God. So, yeah. What?
Do you think all laws are made the same? Do you think all laws are created equal?
They can't be, right? Like,
I'd
because
say so.
how Christ said that there's main ones. Because even the ones that you read where he said, do not do this, do not do this. There's still other things that we probably shouldn't do. You know what I'm saying? But that those are, like, again, pigskin for whatever reason versus murder.
Yeah.
Let's jump straight to extreme rape. Okay, like, yeah, fuck. You'd have to have them differently, for sure.
Yeah, and that's a good point. He doesn't say in Matthew 19, thou shalt not sexually assault anybody.
Right.
But I would still argue that's
still under that.
a huge sin.
Yep.
Yep. It's the same way where I go, I don't think all laws are created equal, so that makes me question if all sin is created equal. You know what I mean?
Because a Christian would argue that it's all the same.
They would.
That is all from the same impulse. So, like, but that's the thing. So, like, if I just got fucking pissed at you and punched you in the face, and then someone else got just the exact same pissed but killed them, that
they can kill me. It's okay.
That act, well, they can, yeah. That act is still from the same. Fuck this guy. You know what I'm saying? Like the same impulse. How would you divide sin if you do? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I agree.
Totally.
I see what you're saying.
Totally.
I see what you're saying.
Well, because, and it's from a human perspective, that other guy did way more to me than what you did. Literally took my life.
Right.
And you just hit me in the face. And while that's not fucking cool, we're going to have some words about that and maybe some blows.
Right.
You didn't kill me.
Kill you. Right.
And so I go, I don't know if God looks at them the same either. Now he might, right? But he might not. And this is like the biggest question for me and a lot of Christians, man. It's like, I know a lot of Christians who still think we need to live by Mosaic Law because like what you're saying, how he said, I didn't come to abolish, but to fulfill.
Right.
They have the same kind of sort of point of views at times where it's like, well, if you throw out anything, then then you're abolishing it. If you throw out one thing, and it's like, but again, the Bible wasn't necessarily written for us.
Well, and he literally says, did this not happen and that makes it okay, even though you thought that this law, you know what I'm saying? Like, what was your point that you just said? Because I was agreeing with it. Fuck, I just forgot it. My bad.
I don't know.
I cut you off and then I forget what I was saying. My bad.
You're good. It's just a point of contention, man. It's like, because I also see other people's point of view, but then you have to get into, well, are we saved by the Mosaic Law? Or are we saved by grace?
Right.
Like, but then it's like, well, sin can't just escape from the world. It's not like we don't sin anymore. So I don't know, man. There's things that are obviously written for them. Maybe this is what I was just saying. Yeah. Right. Okay, and there's things that were written for us.
Right.
Like, after you described the whole thing about sexually assaulting the girl, I mean, it kind of makes sense. Right.
Because at least it's a perspective of you're trying to take the woman into consideration.
Exactly.
Because again, the modern view would be like, well, what the fuck? She deserves to be as far away from that sicko as possible. Like, absolutely. But if her culture is going to kick her to the curb and she's going to be an old hermit on the side of the road with no financial connection to anybody, no one has any responsibility, that might literally be something that could save a woman's life.
Right.
Fuck, that sucks, because fuck a motherfucker that would do that shit. Honestly.
Absolutely.
So again, it's what the culture is. It's a lot more nuanced than, aha, this doesn't apply to my thinking of modern 2021, so it is wrong. You know what I'm saying? Like, and again, the whole because I think it's just a great point of like, well, if someone was killed for wearing two different types of cloth, that is the dumbest shit I've ever heard, and that would discredit a lot of shit. But it does make sense where it's like, okay, if there's wisdom that it may not apply to us now for some reason, if all of a sudden clothes fell apart for the type of clothing they were using, if they were, I don't know, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, dumb shit. But that may be a nice, helpful tip. Okay, you know what I'm saying? But
I would say about the clothes thing,
yeah,
I think that's more of an analogy for us, that we shouldn't be battling within us sin and God, that we should be fully trying to seek God and trying to be, again, like I've said throughout this podcast, of one cloth.
Right.
I think that it's more of an analogy for that.
Interesting. See, and you could take it, when it's a psalm, that you're supposed to really think about it. It's supposed to push your thinking, not just say this. Because when it's like, when Christ lays out those laws of what not to do, this, and this. The Mosaic Law is just a lot more interesting when you kind of open it up like that. And again, it might have just been, if there's verses that say you must kill anyone that you see disobeying these laws, then we got to talk about that shit, because I think that's important. You know what I'm saying? But from what I understand, it's more of a instruction law rather than a Pharisee taking it to the literal word so I can kill you law and control you and have a position of power over you. That's not, like, if I was telling someone about one of the laws and I was just like, this is what I believe, this is what I do, I just wear one cloth, whatever. That's great. And this is like the whole vaccine shit. You can do whatever the fuck you want, but and someone, an anti-Christian would say this to me, you can wear one cloth, but the second that you want to put in policy where I have to wear one cloth, now we have a problem, right? Same, it goes both ways.
It's the same shit.
But I absolutely agree with the liberal side of that. It's like, no, I can't do that. Just because I believe that you should wear one cloth and you're wearing two, does that mean I should kill you? Does that mean I get to fucking murder you, or I get to call the cops and they arrest you? I would assume that does not help anything. And I would assume that those behaviors back then caused a lot of fucking like chaos and confusion, rather than people being able to try to like live a life that is closer to God. They're more afraid of the government than of God. You know what I'm saying?
Totally.
So
it could scare them away.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because you have to have definitions. You have to have boundaries and expectations that you hold, just like the concept of a man and a woman. Biblically speaking, they're two different things. Okay. You can think that they're not outside of the Bible, but if the book is saying it, you can't, again, if it's right or wrong, that's not what I'm saying here. It's that it is not saying that. And so when you can hold it to these definitions, and again, when you get into Torah, it's like, damn, did they mention to these people that were being killed, like it's an instruction rather than like how serious they're making it? I don't know. I would need to talk more to Christians about this shit, but yeah.
And I want to touch on what you just said about making it, male and female and how they're different, and how that is important for humanity. But it's also important, I think, to talk about something we were just talking about in the last episode of what it means to be a man and what it means to be a woman can sometimes mean very different things. It's not necessarily that, all men have to be this way or all women have to be this way. There are certain things that, will come innately with you being a man. But if you look at like King David and a guy named Samson in the Bible, they're very different.
Yes.
Like King David's, he's a more of an effeminate dude. We'll talk about him in the next episode.
Yep.
He played this little harp. He was kind of a badass because he killed Goliath, and he was a shepherd, so he was out there killing lions and shit.
Yeah.
But he was like kind of known as like a softer guy. And Samson was this badass who had dreadlocks and was mad at the city and tied 70 foxes' tails together and lit them on fire and sent them through the town. And then lost his dreadlocks and lost all of his power from God.
Yep.
And someone fucking poked out his eyes, and then he kept being a slave for 30 years. You know what I mean? Dude's the most manliest man of them all. Okay.
Yep.
But that doesn't mean that David is any less of a man because Solomon isn't like
exactly. And that doesn't make David a woman.
Exactly.
There's the spectrum, and again, when there's toxic masculinity, that's a bold generalization of men. That's really fucked up because a lot of great masculine tendencies get sucked under into that, because they're absolutely look at Andrew Tate. There's toxic masculinity, but the fucked up thing, bro, I was talking to Jen about this. The whole thing, and we're getting a little off topic here, but with like males, is that males are dangerous as fuck, dude. Whew. So when Andrew Tate walks in a room, every dude's gonna be like, fuck, okay, you're gonna sit up a little straighter. You're gonna try to not look. Whatever weakness you have, you're gonna try to.
Bro, I'm sucking in my gut, dude, because he's calling me fat so quick.
Call me a skinny little bitch, like he would come in. Yeah, brokey, all that shit.
Yeah.
But that's the thing is that even though we don't want to be an Andrew Tate, when he walks into a room, you have to contend with him. There's no choice. And it would be way easier if I could fucking break him down so he's not as masculine, so then I could feel better about myself. When we see our world and how big of a push from our authorities there have been on masculinity, it makes absolute complete sense because masculine tendencies are dangerous as fuck.
Yeah, totally.
And if you are helpless, you're not virtuous. If you can't defend yourself and you can't do anything, and just because that means you can't hurt somebody doesn't make you a good person. Being a dangerous person and not hurting somebody, my friend Garrett, he would go into parties, bro, and people would be like, oh, fuck, dude, he's going to come in and break everything and fuck everybody up, and no one can do anything because he's way too big.
Yeah.
And he'd come in and be the nicest guy, and people loved that this dangerous, loaded cannon was just, I'm just friends with you. You know what I'm saying? Like, people love that shit. Masculinity is a beautiful thing. There are toxic masculine traits. There's toxic feminine traits. Feminine men are not women. A feminine man can be feminine. And I want a feminine man to be feminine if he wants to be. You know what I'm saying? Like,
that's the LGBTQ community tapping on our doors right now.
I'll get off that tangent, but
no, I hear you, dog. I hear you. I hear you.
And that all comes down to definitions are important.
Yeah.
And if the Bible had no definitions of anything, then it would be a very fucking confusing book if anything meant literally anything. So that's all I'm getting at.
Can I throw something a little bit more confusing at you?
Hit me, dog.
Can you look up on Google Abraham and Sarah and if they're related? Because I've heard this, but I don't know if it's true. Sarah's Abraham's wife, and I heard that they're brother and sister. Explains that Sarah was an earlier name, that she was renamed the Annunciation. Was Sarah the half-sister of Abraham? Family, according to the book of Genesis 20:12. Conversation with the Philistine king. Abraham reveals Sarah to both his both his wife and his half-sister, stating that two share a father but not a mother. So they're related.
You sick bastards.
Right? And
I gotta see that
in the Torah or in the Mosaic Law, besides, where's this King James? She is my sister, and she is the daughter of my father, not the daughter of my mother, and she became my wife.
You fucking sicko.
Amazing. So it's interesting when you look at that. I don't know if Mosaic Law, I don't think it's put into place at this time, but Mosaic Law is that you shouldn't have incest.
Yes.
But Abraham is the father of nations. He's the father of God's chosen people.
Yes.
So it could be that, Mosaic Law isn't put into place yet, so that God is like, fuck it, you can do it with his half sister. It's all good.
Right.
But still, it's like, to me, I feel like God would kind of be contradicting himself there.
Because I would totally agree that he's doing something that if everyone did, we would probably not have as stable of a society. You know what I'm saying? So
Totally.
I don't know if he gets a pass for that by God, because it wouldn't be for me, because it's like, bro, you fucking read the instructions we got to do to get close to God. You're marrying your sister.
But it says that he blesses Sarah. It's like if you want to look that up, it says God blesses Sarah.
So then, like, she's good to go? Or?
She's good to go, man.
Yeah, I mean,
it's just weird.
That feels like a contradiction. But again, it may also show that those instructions do not apply to literally every single human being that exists all at the same time. You know what I'm saying?
Bam.
But you get dangerous with that, because then there's some interpretation, and Christians are like, but like, okay, then murder me for wearing 2 different cloths. Like, really? Like, don't fucking say we should all live by Mosaic Law and then just live by a couple of them and get by. There's 613. You better fucking know by heart if it is, like what that article said, completely necessary for that shit. Okay, well then I want to see it. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
Interesting that he married his daughter. Because what book is this? Genesis.
Yeah, man.
So this could have technically been before?
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
You know, it is before, but it's like,
okay.
still, if these are the laws of God and God doesn't want us to marry our sister,
well, because in Adam and Eve.
Well, all of that
down and
old
dirty.
stuff is all incest.
Oh.
All of the old stuff is incest.
You have to. I guess he could have made like 6 of us, and then, or 10. He could have made a group, and then we're all good, right?
Lilith, man.
Oh, Lilith, yeah. Lilith.
Everyone go look up Lilith. We're not going to talk about her, but
shout out Lilith.
She's I was joking about her with. So Lilith apparently is reportedly the first woman of the in the Bible that God made. She's not in the Bible.
Is she Adam's girl?
Yeah.
So she's his side girl or his main girl?
I think that she was originally his main girl, and he killed her. And I think that God brought her back, and he kept killing her, and he kept killing her. And I joked about it with my sister and my brother-in-law, and I was like, yeah, well, I mean, like, God only gave Adam one rule, and it was not to kill Lilith. So it's like this motherfucker was like, hey man, I'm not eating of that tree, but I'm killing this bitch that you made for me, bro.
Make me a
Fuck
new one,
this
God.
lady. Where's
Come
this
on.
new lady? And he's like, all
That is
right,
so
I'll
funny.
make Eve. I'll make you a
That
helper.
is so funny.
He's like, dude, Lilith ain't helping me one motherfucking bit. God.
She just backtalks to me. I need a subservient woman. Oh my God, that's funny as fuck. Lilith, man, I want to know the tendencies and the character of Lilith. I'm gonna look into her tonight.
Yeah, dude, but the thing is, you know, I think it's pretty clear that Jesus goes into Mosaic Law, and there are some that he upholds even to a higher standard than what is written.
Yes, because you pointed that out, that he said this was a law before, and it's no longer.
But it's deeper than that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yep.
It's not just about murder. It's about the anger in your heart that you have towards other people. It's not just about adultery. It's about what you're lusting after,
right,
and who you're lusting after. It's not necessarily even just about lying, and this isn't biblical, but it's about stretching the truth, right? Like, why would you even stretch?
Right.
Why would you stretch the truth?
Yep.
For what?
For what reason?
Right.
Where's your heart at when you're stretching the truth? Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, and so even in Matthew 19, this was that when I interrupted you and forgot what I was saying.
Bastard.
This is what I was talking about, is they're talking about that divorce. And he's saying that Moses was wrong. But from the beginning, it was not so. Is that what he's saying? He's saying, yeah, Moses said that, but he was wrong.
Yeah, in I don't know if it's in Matthew 5 or Matthew 19, or if it's just another translation, but it literally, there's a saying where it's like, and God permitted Moses to put this in. Like, there were things that God allowed Moses to put in there because people were acting some type of way.
There's a beautiful argument right there for the entire flat earth thing.
Yeah.
Is that
totally?
Well, yeah, he just put it in there. He just put it in there for the time of the people. Interesting. Because, yeah, you could make that argument. Interesting. That's awesome, dude. I love that shit. Beautiful.
Mosaic Law, baby.
Mosaic Law. I hope you all enjoyed. That was awesome. That was super productive, I feel like.
I'd agree, yeah. Totally. It's awesome to learn that the Torah just means instruction.
Let me give you, there's a couple websites that were like, oh, man, these have, stereotypical names that will, where are we?
What is it, Jesus.com?
It's like the ancienthebrew.org or some
Yeah.
shit. Oh, no, it's in the Torah.
I do think it's cool. The Hebrew word Torah is traditionally translated as law, which in this context means teaching, instruction, or guidance.
That's BBC. Ancient Hebrew. To
Torah.
flow or throw something.
Okay.
And a Hebraic definition of Torah is a set of instructions from a father to his children.
Violations of the
in order to-
instructions are disciplined in order to foster obedience and train his children.
Yes.
Nice.
Yep. And nowhere am I seeing the government should come in and fucking kill you for this. You know what I'm saying? A father would not kill his child for violating instruction.
Yeah, totally. And he wouldn't leave his child either.
Right.
But did you see anything about how the Hebrews thought that it was needed for salvation through these? Because I think we just learned that on the podcast.
Yes, I did. I have not seen that when I was looking at this shit up until that article that we saw.
So that's interesting that that might be Pharisees, like you're saying.
Yes.
Where it's like
maybe
it was just instruction, but because they were like, no, you need this, that still could be a Pharisee type teaching.
Yep.
Interesting, yeah.
Well, and then Chabad.org, which is, that's a very Jewish word, I think, or Hebrew word. Just literally means instruction, meaning some sort of guidance in life. And then here's that what we talked about that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, hell yeah, man. That's much more nuance. It cuts the knees out of the argument that's great of the Mosaic Law being the huge defining factor of what biblical shit is and how they just killed people for stupid reasons just to maintain control. I agree with that. But again, I don't think that represents the Bible. Because again, that's the whole argument of 9/11, then I know all I need to know about Muslims. And it's like, well, you can take whatever you want, misrepresent it, and then have your opinion, but the text does not say fly your plane into a building. You know what I'm saying? So it's beautiful, man. A lot goes into it. So I hope we open some eyes. I hope we were able to, just get you thinking a little bit. That's all we're trying to do out here.
And the thing is, we don't know. And I'm not even going to say the words that we know we normally say at the end of these, but I think it's 5 words.
I'm trying to get the acronym. Let me type it out.
I'm not even going to say that. What I'm going to say is I think this was a great conversation. I think it was very productive, but I also think that we don't really, I don't want to say we don't know what we're talking about, but this is kind of like when it comes to the councils to me. There's so much here that if you're really interested in this, I would say start digging, because if you can leave this podcast and listen to what we have to say and just be like, I'm not going to think about that ever again, good for you.
Yeah.
But if this is put on your heart, you got to start figuring out what it means for you.
Yeah, don't listen to us. We're here to just open the door to what is out there and just show you these are some conversations, because again, every conversation in this fucking whole series has been happening for thousands of years.
Yeah.
We did not this question is new. It's like, this question is really hard. So hard that it's been thousands of years and we still are like kind of the jury's out on it. So, yeah, 100%, man. We're on to the next one. One more.
Keep living. Keep growing.
Hope y'all enjoyed.
Bye, 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 bye.
Oh, also, IACDTF. Gotta burn, baby.
You know what it is, bitch.
I need a special life. I'm thinking that's what this is. There's no better time than this to exist. I'm running with my head down, I'm running with my tail tucked. I've been let down.